We always hear that public blockchains are all about transparency. It's their defining feature, right? But what if that total transparency is actually a huge liability? That's what we're diving into today, exploring a fascinating technology called Harpo that's trying to bring real, verifiable privacy to the public ledger.
This question really gets to the absolute core of the problem. Just think about it for a second. A public blockchain is basically a book that anyone, anywhere in the world can open up and read. So how on earth are you supposed to write down sensitive financial information in that book and still keep it secret? It sounds like a complete paradox, doesn't it?
And believe me, this isn't just some academic thought experiment. In the real world, for actual financial applications, this paradox is a massive flaw. Complete, total transparency isn't always a feature to be celebrated. Sometimes it's a bug that just blows the doors wide open on security and sensitive data.
So let's really dig into this transparency problem. Even in heavily regulated systems, think of something like Brazil's digital currency project, Drex. Total openness can be a huge risk. It can expose a company's entire business strategy to its competitors. That's a level of risk we would never, ever accept in the traditional financial world.
Okay, so that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We absolutely need confidentiality, but we can't just throw a blanket over everything and, hope for the best. The whole point of a blockchain is that it's verifiable. Everyone has to be able to trust that the rules are being followed. So, how do you get the best of both worlds? Well, the answer we're looking at today is a system called Harpo.
And this brings us right to Harpo. It's a technology designed from the ground up to solve this exact challenge. The whole idea is to enable private transactions that are, at the same time, publicly verifiable. It's all about achieving trust without having to have total exposure.
So what's the secret sauce here? How does Harpo actually pull this off? Well, the magic ingredient is something called zero-knowledge proofs, or ZKPs for short. And the idea behind them is just brilliant. A ZKP allows you to prove that a transaction is valid without showing anyone the underlying data. It's kind of like proving you have the key to a door without ever actually showing the key itself.
And this line from the source material just sums up the entire goal perfectly. Trust without exposure. That is the absolute promise of using ZKPs inside of Harpo. You get this rock-solid mathematical certainty that everything is correct without having to lay all your cards on the table for the entire world to see.
All right, so I think we've got a good handle on the what and the why. Now let's get into the how. We're going to take a look under the hood at Harpo's design, which is really built to be simple, modular, and, this is absolutely crucial for regulated finance, auditable.
So, Harpo's architecture really stands on four main pillars, and it's how they all work together that's so smart. First, it uses a transaction model called UTXO. Second, it has that zero-knowledge proof privacy layer we just talked about. Third, its design is modular, meaning it can work with systems that already exist. And finally, it has a built-in loop for authorities. Let's break down what each of these really does.
Okay, first up, the UTXO model. If you're familiar with Bitcoin, you've heard of this. Instead of thinking about an account with a running balance, it treats value as these discrete little chunks called unspent transaction outputs. The reason this is so clever is that this structure makes it way easier to apply those complex privacy proofs to individual transactions. It effectively puts each transaction in its own little box, separate from a user's bigger financial history.
Next, Harpo is modular. And this is a really important point. Harpo isn't trying to be a whole new blockchain. It's designed as a privacy layer that can sit right on top of existing public chains like Ethereum. This sort of plug-in approach is what lets it do all this cool stuff, like execute private transactions, swap public and private tokens, and even integrate with smart contracts that are already out there, all without having to rebuild everything from scratch.
And this naturally brings us to the regulation piece. How do you possibly let regulators have oversight without just creating a giant backdoor for surveillance? Well, Harpo's answer is what's called selective auditability. Authorities can be given the power to audit specific transactions, but, and this is a huge but, only with the user's consent or with a proper legal order. They don't just get a master key to everybody's financial life.
This quote just perfectly captures the whole philosophy. It's all about finding that middle ground. You get the real privacy that users and businesses desperately need, while also making sure the system stays compliant and that regulators have the tools they need to stop bad actors. Not everything is public, but nothing is out of control. It's just a really powerful balance.
So when you put all these different pieces together, what do you end up with?
Well, you get a system where two things that seem like total opposites, privacy and verifiability, can actually, finally, live together happily on a public blockchain.
Let's make this crystal clear with a side-by-side comparison. Over on the left, you have your standard public token model, like in Drex, where every single detail of a transaction is out in the open. But on the right, you have the Harpo model. The transaction data itself is kept confidential, but, and this is the key, its validity is confirmed for everyone to see through those amazing verifiable proofs.
And this dual benefit is really Harpo's masterstroke. It manages to serve two groups that often seem to have completely opposite needs. On one hand, users and businesses get the confidentiality they need to operate. On the other, regulators get the verifiability and the audit tools they require to do their jobs. It's this win-win that could finally unlock a whole new wave of regulated financial services on public blockchains.
And this really all leads to a much, much bigger question. As more and more countries explore digital currencies and tokenized assets, the demand for this exact balance, this perfect blend of privacy and regulation, is just going to explode. So could a system like Harpo become the blueprint for the future of regulated digital money? It's a pretty fascinating possibility to think about.